Welcome back to Global Eye. Today we're covering a story that will touch your heart and might just bring tears to your eyes. Vin Diesel, now 58 years old, is one of the world's biggest action stars. His voice is iconic, his presence is powerful, and his Fast and Furious franchise has grossed billions worldwide. But behind the tough exterior, the muscle cars, and the blockbuster success lies a man carrying a wound that has never healed. A loss so profound that over a decade later, he still breaks down when he talks about it. Paul Walker died on November 30th, 2013, in a horrific car crash that shocked the world. But for Vin Diesel, it wasn't just losing a co-star. It was losing the man he called his brother, his other half, the person who understood him in ways no one else could. 11 years later, Diesel still honors Walker's memory in everything he does. From naming his youngest daughter Pauline after him, to breaking down in tears at the mention of his name, and as Fast and Furious 11 approaches, Diesel has admitted he's going to have to brace himself because seeing Brian O'Connor's story concluded will be emotionally devastating. If you're new here, subscribe and hit that notification bell because this isn't just a story about grief. It's about brotherhood, love that transcends death, and how some losses change you forever. Let's dive into what happened to Vin Diesel and why it will leave you speechless. To understand Vin Diesel's pain, you need to understand what Paul Walker meant to him. They met in 2001 when they were cast as the leads in The Fast and the Furious, a modestly budgeted street racing film that nobody expected to become a global phenomenon. Diesel played Dominic Toretto, the stoic, intense street racer with a moral code. Walker played Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop, who infiltrates Dom's crew and ends up becoming part of the family. On screen, their chemistry was electric. Off-screen, they formed a bond that would define both of their lives. In a September 2024 Instagram post commemorating what would have been Walker's 51st birthday, Diesel shared a photo from their early days and wrote about looking back a quarter century ago, believing that was the moment they knew their brotherhood was going to change Hollywood, that they meant something to the world. Think about that statement. From the very beginning, Diesel and Walker recognized something special in their connection, something that went beyond acting or career success. They saw each other as brothers, not by blood but by choice, by love, by shared experiences and mutual respect. Walker was more than just Diesel's co-star. He was his confidant, the person he could be vulnerable with in an industry that demanded toughness and image control. In various interviews over the years, Diesel has described Walker as his other half, the person who balanced him, who brought lightness to his intensity, who made him laugh when the pressure got too heavy. Walker's daughter Meadow, who was just 15 when her father died, has spoken about how much Diesel meant to her father and how their friendship was based on genuine love and respect, not Hollywood superficiality. The Fast and Furious franchise grew from a single film into a billion-dollar empire. But for Diesel and Walker, it was always about more than money or fame. They built something together, created characters and stories that resonated with audiences worldwide because the brotherhood on screen reflected the brotherhood off-screen. Every scene they shared, every moment of Dom and Brian's friendship, was infused with the reality of Diesel and Walker's actual relationship. That authenticity is what made the franchise special, and that authenticity is what makes Diesel's loss so unbearable. On November 30th, 2013, Paul Walker attended a charity event for his organization Reach Out Worldwide in Valencia, California. The event was going well, raising money to help victims of Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. Walker was in good spirits, talking with fans, enjoying himself. Then he and his friend Roger Rodas, a professional race car driver and financial advisor, decided to take Roda's 2005 Porsche Carrera GT for a drive. It was supposed to be a quick ride, nothing unusual for two car enthusiasts who loved speed and performance vehicles. At approximately 3:30 p.m., the Porsche crashed into a concrete lamppost and two trees on Hercules Street. The car exploded into flames. Both Walker, age 40, and Rodas, age 38, were killed instantly. The crash site was horrific. The wreckage unrecognizable as the beautiful sports car it had been moments before. News of Walker's death spread rapidly, shocking fans around the world. But for the people who actually knew him, for his family and friends and co-stars, the shock was magnified 1,000 times, because this wasn't just a celebrity death. This was losing someone they loved. Vin Diesel was informed of Walker's death while the news was still breaking. In a December 2013 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Diesel described what happened next. He went to Walker's mother's house to comfort her. To be there for the family he'd become part of over 12 years of friendship. But when he got there, Diesel said, he broke down. He completely lost control of his emotions in a way he'd never experienced before. And it was Walker's mother, in the midst of her own unimaginable grief, who ended up comforting him. She told Diesel, "You lost your other half." Think about that moment. A mother who just lost her son had to comfort Vin Diesel because she recognized that his loss, while different from hers, was equally profound. She saw what everyone who knew them saw, that Diesel and Walker weren't just friends or coworkers. They were bonded at a level most people never experience. Diesel later said in a Facebook tribute, "When the tragedy happened, I lost my friend. I lost my brother." That's not Hollywood hyperbole or promotional language. That's a man expressing genuine, devastating grief. When Paul Walker died, Fast and Furious 7 was still in production. They'd filmed about half the movie. But Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, still had significant scenes that needed to be shot. The production shut down immediately after Walker's death, while everyone grieved and the studio figured out what to do. The options were brutal: shelve the film entirely, rewrite it to kill off Brian early, or find a way to complete Walker's performance posthumously. Eventually, director James Wan, the studio, and the cast decided they owed it to Walker to finish the film as close to the original vision as possible. What followed was unprecedented in filmmaking. Walker's brothers, Caleb and Cody, who bore striking physical resemblances to Paul, agreed to stand in for him in remaining scenes. Using a combination of body doubles, CGI voice work, and previously shot footage, the filmmakers painstakingly completed Brian's arc in the film. But for Vin Diesel, coming back to set and continuing to film without his co-star and brother was agony. He described it in a March 2015 interview, before the film's release, as the hardest thing he'd ever done professionally and personally. Diesel has said that every day on set felt wrong, like something essential was missing. Brian was supposed to be there. Paul was supposed to be there, cracking jokes between takes, talking about cars and family, being the lightness that balanced Dom's darkness. Instead, there were empty spaces where Walker should have been. Digital approximations of a person who could never truly be replaced. And a grief so heavy that Diesel struggled to deliver his lines without breaking down. But he pushed through because he knew Paul would have wanted the film completed. Would have wanted Brian's story told properly. The final scene of Furious 7, where Dom and Brian race one last time before going their separate ways, wasn't originally in the script. It was written specifically as a farewell to Paul Walker, a way to give his character a proper send-off while allowing Diesel and the entire cast to say goodbye. When Diesel delivers the line, "You'll always be my brother," as the camera pulls back and the two cars split off in different directions, while Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth's "See You Again" plays, it's not just Dom saying goodbye to Brian, it's Vin saying goodbye to Paul. The tears you see on Diesel's face in that scene weren't acting, they were real. 11 years have passed since Paul Walker's death, and Vin Diesel still can't talk about him without getting emotional. In December 2024, on the 11th anniversary of Walker's passing, Diesel shared another tribute on Instagram with photos of them together during happier times. He wrote about how Walker's loss left an emotional void, not just for the cast, but for audiences worldwide. About how his ongoing tributes help ensure Walker's legacy remains intertwined with the series' message of loyalty, family, and perseverance. But these aren't just words for publicity or fan service. Diesel's pain is visceral and ongoing. In September 2024, on what would have been Walker's 51st birthday, Diesel posted a long, heartfelt tribute that revealed just how deeply he still feels the loss. He wrote about visiting Walker's parents that summer and feeling Paul's presence in their loving embrace. About how for the last 11 years he's held their words like talismans of light, each gifting him with love and wisdom. He mentioned Walker's daughter Meadow, who is now in her mid-20s and continuing her father's charitable work, particularly ocean conservation. Diesel described seeing Meadow at a recent birthday dinner and being moved by how she's carrying forward Paul's legacy of helping others. But the most revealing part of that September 2024 post was When Diesel wrote about the upcoming Fast and Furious 11, he said he'd just seen concept art for the next chapter, and then wrote, "Brian, yeah, I will have to brace myself for this next film." Think about what that means. 11 years after Walker's death, the thought of finishing the Fast saga without him, of bringing Brian O'Connor's story to its final conclusion, still fills Diesel with dread. He's literally warning himself that he needs to prepare emotionally for what's coming, because he knows it's going to devastate him all over again. This isn't grief that's been processed and moved past. This is grief that Diesel carries every single day, that resurfaces whenever he talks about the franchise, whenever he visits with Walker's family, whenever he thinks about the brother he lost. In various interviews, Diesel has described how he still finds himself wanting to call Paul to talk about something, how he still catches himself thinking about what Paul would say in certain situations, how the absence never becomes comfortable or normal. Walker's death created a hole in Diesel's life that can never be filled, and at 58, Diesel has accepted that this pain is something he'll carry for the rest of his life. In March 2015, just days after Furious 7 was released, Vin Diesel announced the birth of his third child, a daughter. He and his longtime partner, Paloma Jimenez, had already had 2 children, daughter Henya Riley, born in 2008, and son Vincent, born in 2010. But when their third child arrived, Diesel gave her a name that made his feelings about Paul Walker unmistakably clear. He named her Pauline directly after his late friend and co-star, not as a middle name or subtle tribute, as her primary name, ensuring that Paul Walker's memory would be spoken in his household every single day for the rest of his life. Diesel announced Pauline's birth on the Today Show, and when asked about the name, he became visibly emotional. He explained that Paul Walker had been in the delivery room when Diesel's son Vincent was born, and that Paul was one of the first people to hold Vincent after his birth. That moment had been incredibly meaningful to Diesel, having his brother there for one of the most important moments of his life. So when his daughter was born just months after Paul's death, naming her Pauline felt like the most natural and necessary thing in the world. It was a way to honor Paul's memory, to keep him present in the family, and to ensure that Diesel's children would grow up knowing about the man their father loved as a brother. Pauline Diesel is now 9 years old. She's grown up hearing stories about the man she's named after, seeing her father get emotional when Paul Walker's name comes up, understanding from a young age that her name carries weight and meaning and love. Diesel has said in interviews that his children know who Paul was and what he meant to their father. They've watched the Fast and Furious films and seen the brotherhood their dad had with Paul on screen. They've met Meadow Walker, who Diesel considers like a niece, and they understand that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people you choose to love, and who choose to love you back. The decision to name his daughter Pauline is perhaps the most powerful statement Diesel has ever made about his grief and his love for Paul Walker. It's permanent, unchangeable, a daily reminder and tribute that will last for generations. When Diesel's grandchildren ask someday why their mother or aunt is named Pauline, they'll learn the story of Paul Walker, of the brotherhood between 2 men, of a friendship so deep that it transcended death. That's how you honor someone's memory, not with occasional Instagram posts or interviews, but by weaving them into the fabric of your life so completely that they can never be forgotten. At 58 years old, Vin Diesel remains one of Hollywood's most private major stars. Despite his massive fame and recognizable voice and appearance, very little is known about his personal life because that's how he wants it. He's been in a relationship with Mexican model Paloma Jimenez since Arlene Lean's he, nearly 18 years together, but they've never married. They have 3 children together, Henya, Riley, Vincent, and Pauline. Jimenez doesn't have a social media presence, and Diesel rarely posts about his family, preferring to keep that part of his life sacred and protected from public scrutiny. In a Parade interview, Diesel made his philosophy clear. "I'm not going to put it out there on a magazine cover like some other actors." He believes that sharing too much of his personal life makes the people he loves vulnerable in ways they didn't sign up for. He can handle the scrutiny and pressure that comes with fame. But his partner and children didn't choose that life, so he works hard to shield them from it. The one exception he makes is when it comes to honoring Paul Walker, because he believes keeping Paul's memory alive is more important than his usual privacy rules. Diesel's approach to fatherhood has been deeply influenced by Paul Walker. In a 2017 Entertainment Tonight interview, Diesel called Jimenez the perfect mother. and spoke about how fatherhood changed him and made him understand what truly matters in life. He's talked about how Paul's devotion to his daughter Meadow inspired him to be more present with his own children, to prioritize family time, even when work demands are intense. Walker's death reinforced that lesson in the most painful way possible, reminding Diesel that tomorrow isn't guaranteed and that the people you love need to know they're loved while you still have time. At 58, Diesel is also thinking about his legacy and how much longer he can continue doing the physically demanding work that's defined his career. He's expressed interest in directing more and developing projects through his production company, One Race Films. He's mentoring younger actors and stunt performers, passing on what he's learned over 3 decades in the industry. And he's determined to finish the Fast saga properly, to give fans the conclusion they deserve, while honoring Paul Walker's contribution to everything the franchise became. Fast and Furious 11 is scheduled for release in 2025 or 2026, and it will mark the end of the main saga that began in 2001. For Vin Diesel, finishing this story without Paul Walker physically present but with his spirit woven throughout will be the culmination of everything he's worked for and lost over the past 24 years. In September 2025, Diesel posted an emotional update about filming a prequel short film with Michelle Rodriguez, describing their bond as unbreakable and talking about the future of Fast. The post was filled with both excitement and apprehension. About completing this final chapter, Diesel has said publicly that he will have to brace himself for Fast 11 because seeing Brian O'Connor's story reach its conclusion will force him to confront Paul Walker's absence all over again. After Furious 7, the franchise continued with the fate of the Furious, F9, and Fast X. But Brian was written out by saying he'd retired to be with his family. That allowed the story to continue while respecting that Paul was gone. But Fast 11 will be the true ending. The moment when everything comes full circle and the saga that Dom and Brian started together finally concludes. There's speculation among fans that Brian might appear in some capacity in Fast 11, perhaps through a combination of archival footage, Diesel's narration, or appearances by Walker's brothers as stand-ins. Diesel hasn't confirmed anything specific, but his comments about needing to brace himself suggest that Brian's presence will be felt in the film somehow. The thought of Diesel having to film scenes that reference or incorporate Brian one last time, knowing it's truly the final goodbye, is almost unbearable to contemplate. What makes this even more poignant is that Diesel has recently reconciled with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson after years of feuding. At the 2025 Golden Globes in January, Diesel gave a subtle nod to Johnson while presenting an award, signaling that their differences are behind them. The Rock is returning for Fast 11, bringing the original crew back together for one final ride. But the one person who should be there, who needs to be there for the story to feel complete, is the person who can't be, Paul Walker. And Diesel will have to carry that weight while still delivering a performance that honors everything the franchise has meant to fans worldwide. The tragedy of Vin Diesel at 58 isn't scandal or controversy. It's love that endures beyond death, grief that never fully heals, and the burden of carrying forward a legacy that was meant to be shared. Every interview where he breaks down talking about Paul, every tribute post on birthdays and anniversaries, every mention of needing to brace himself for what's coming next, these aren't publicity stunts or attempts to generate sympathy. These are the authentic expressions of a man who lost his other half and has spent 11 years trying to figure out how to keep going while honoring that loss. At 58, Vin Diesel has achieved everything most actors dream of: global fame, financial security, a loving family, and a franchise that will be remembered for generations. But he's also experienced a loss that would break most people. The death of someone so integral to his identity that even 11 years later, the wound remains raw. His decision to name his daughter Pauline, his ongoing tributes to Paul Walker, his admission that he still needs to brace himself emotionally for Fast 11, all of it reveals a man who refuses to let his brother's memory fade, even though keeping it alive means reliving the pain over and over. This is what happened to Vin Diesel. Not a scandal, not a downfall, not a tragedy in the sensational sense, but a loss that changed him fundamentally. That taught him the difference between success and meaning, between fame and family, between what the world sees and what truly matters. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this story is that Diesel has chosen to honor Paul Walker, not by moving on or getting over it, but by keeping him alive in everything he does. What's your perspective on Vin Diesel's journey? How do you think grief changes us? And what does it mean to truly honor someone's memory? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more deeply researched stories about the human side of Hollywood. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and remember, the people we love never truly leave us as long as we keep their memory alive.